So the Chicago Bears went out there and have officially hired Ben Johnson to be the head coach of this team. And today we're going to talk about some of what this guy shows in terms of on tape, some of the offensive structures and plays. We'll look at some of the stats as well as to what type of personnel this guy utilizes. I'm excited for this one, man. The Chicago Bears obviously got themselves the best play caller in the NFL, and they got a guy that could absolutely take this team to the next step. To me, based off of where the Bears were, let's say 5 or 6 years ago, relative to where they're at today, it's such a massive difference, and I feel like people almost overlook this a little bit. If you guys think about this, when Ryan Poles initially took that job with the Bears years back, the Bears couldn't land interviews with guys like Dan Campbell and Nick Sirianni, and they ultimately had to settle with a guy like Matt Eberflus because of the fact that coaches just did not want to be with the Bears, and we have to be 100% honest about that. Right? A team is not going to just land any coach at any point. You have to be a good team with a good roster, with a good structure in place. And Ryan Poles has kind of changed the narrative for the Chicago Bears. Right? Truth be told, Ben Johnson was the guy that pretty much every team out there wanted, and he chose the Chicago Bears. He chose to go to this situation that Ryan Poles has kind of put this team in. And I think for the Bears, there's so much that's going to happen for the Bears as we kind of go forward. And I'm excited for it. Of course, we'll be covering the Bears on this channel as we kind of go forward. Let's get into this, man. I really want to get into some of what Ben Johnson has shown us in terms of some of that creativity, right? We'll start right here with the playoff game in which you're going to essentially get a pitch to the left, running back takes the ball, and then the running back shovel passes it to the wide receiver. This is the first time I've ever seen this play, and if someone has seen this play somewhere else, make sure you guys drop that link down in the comments below so we know where this play comes from. But I'm going to just make the assumption Ben Johnson created this play. We think about the concept within this and the execution as well. So you're going to pitch this out here towards the left, but more than pitching it out towards the left, if you look at the offensive linemen also have to block this up front in a way where you get the defense to flow to the left. You're going to let the defensive end here essentially go unblocked. You'll also take the 3 technique and you'll make sure to let him go to the outside as well. That's going to be this guy here. The left tackle has to get to the inside of this guy. And to me, that's perfect, right? You want to set this up in a way where you're getting to the inside of this guy because it's easier to wall him off. At the same time, the left guard here is going to block down on the nose, make sure the nose is not going to be able to kind of make that play. And you're going to even end up pulling the guard on this one. And the guard's going to end up pulling and essentially going right through the middle of this and lead blocking. To me, it's a really nicely executed play up front. And the pitch ends up working. And just like that, you get some wide receivers blocking downfield, get a couple of seal out blocks, and you pick up 20 yards on first and 10. To me, it's a phenomenal play by Ben Johnson, but of course, it's not the only play this guy's created. We had a 3rd and 12 play as well a couple weeks before against the San Francisco 49ers, and Ben Johnson created another play. Now, this one is obviously a play the Chiefs have kind of run before, where you're going to essentially pitch the ball to a guy coming across, but the creativity comes from the fact that, it's not always run this exact way, right? It's a little bit different, right? And I'm going to show you guys a play from earlier this season as well, where it's a very similar play. But you guys can see it from the All-22 where the pass is going to be thrown to the wide receiver at the top of your screen. But more than that, the wide receiver coming across from the opposite side is going to be the guy that's going to catch this toss. And more than that, you're also going to have the tight end here. And do not overlook the tight end in the slot. And look at the route he's essentially running to set himself up to be out there to essentially make that block, right? That block right there is the key part of this play working. The play does not score a touchdown without that block, but I want to show you guys a very similar play from about 5 weeks ago, where once again, it's going to be a very similar setup, similar formation. You're going to get 2 guys at the top. The receiver at the very, very top is going to catch it. And this time, instead of bringing a wide receiver across, it's going to be the running back out of the backfield that's going to get that pitch. Right, so again, it's another play. This one was 4th and 10. This is the key moment here of the game for the Detroit Lions. You're down by 13 points. You want to win this game. You got to be able to score points at this point, right? And it's just another really nicely designed play. You're going to throw the ball here. Again, another part of this is the running back's going to come out of the backfield, and he's going to be the guy that's going to ultimately get the football. And then, of course, lastly, you got to give credit to the execution and the blocking, right? And that's one of the things you're going to notice with Ben Johnson is everybody is on point with the blocking. You keep an eye on the tight end in the slot, you're going to notice same exact situation where this guy realizes what the play is he's going to put himself in position to make the block downfield, right? He does a really good job being able to kind of block that guy, and It's a really nicely executed play exactly when you needed it, right? 4th and 10, you need 10 yards, and you pick up 23. Again, it's just a really nicely executed job by Ben Johnson, right? You're essentially designing these concepts where you're making it hard to defend, right? And I watched every single one of Ben Johnson's passing concepts from this past season, and he ran this play, I'd say, about 4 to 5 times. Obviously, that's another time that they ran it. It obviously had success. They're able to score on that one. And then they also ran it against the Jaguars where it was 1st and 10. They ended up picking up about 11 yards. So again, a really nice job once again. You pick up the first down. You kind of keep the chains moving. Now, of course, Ben Johnson also designs a ton of end arounds, a ton of screen plays, and just the general keeping a defense honest. I always say this with NFL teams. For a team to have success, you got to have a quarterback that can run a structured offense. Got to get a quarterback that can run spacing concepts, quick game concepts. You got to be able to hit those medium passes, right? If it's like Dagger or Mills, you got to be able to read and play within structure. And then, of course, you have shot plays as well. And we'll get into some of that in this video. But then the wild card, in my opinion, with the coordinators that are absolutely great versus the coordinators that aren't very good, is going to be plays like this, right? Where you're essentially running end arounds. You're designing your guys to maybe go in motion one way, but you hit it the other way. Take this play as an example. Look at how the guys up front almost make it seem like this is a play to the left. You get the right guard here to pull to the left. You get a bunch of down blocks by all these different guys. You're essentially showing that this is some sort of counter to the left. Even the action by the guys over here to the right is all saying the play is going to go to the left. But the thing is within this play, you see the tight end's going to end up flipping. Right, number 89 is going to end up taking steps to the left. He's going to end up running back to the right. At the same time, number 77 here is not actually going to be down blocking or back blocking as in this instance if this was a counter to the left. Instead, he's just kind of getting out here to get out in front. Right, so the center, the tight end are essentially not doing what it looks like initially. And it's just drawn up perfectly. Right, it's executed perfectly. The guys actually know what they're doing. And if you guys think back when Luke Getsy was here with the Bears, the biggest issue with Luke Getsy was the fact that Luke Getsy's guys did not know how to block plays properly. Right? The guys did not know how to execute plays. Guys looked lost. The spacing of routes was all over the place. Guys were running into each other. And to me, that was the big issue with Luke Getsy. And even when he was with the Raiders, it was the same stuff that was kind of happening. The great coordinators 100% understand what they have to do in order to be able to have success on offense. You got to make sure your guys know what they're doing every single play. If there's an out route that's 7 yards downfield, it needs to be 7 yards. And your guys got to understand why, and they got to be able to actually go out there and execute it. Ben Johnson does a great job making sure his guys know every angle to take, why they're doing the block, why they're kind of motioning left or right, why they're spinning back and climbing. Ben Johnson makes sure from a coaching element, every single guy understands what their responsibility is. And to me, that's one of the big differences with a guy like Ben Johnson relative to some of the other coordinators that are not as good as what Ben Johnson essentially does, right? And of course, the trick play element of it is one thing. Obviously, Ben Johnson will continue to implement some of these plays. And trust me, when I tell you guys, there's so many of these type of trick plays that Ben Johnson has put in there that have worked, right? That have hit for touchdowns. And I'm 100% confident that these same plays will be brought over to the Chicago Bears. And I'm 100% sure these plays will end up working for the Bears as well, and it'll allow them to ultimately have success. Now, I do want to go ahead and shift focus, and I want to show you guys more than just trick plays. I want to actually go ahead and show you guys some of what I expect with Ben Johnson, just generally speaking, based off of all the different tape that I've seen. Let's talk a little bit about what you're going to expect from a Ben Johnson offense in terms of the run game. About 70% of the time, Ben Johnson calls zone, primarily outside zone, which I think works perfectly for a team like the Chicago Bears, who have a really good right tackle in Darnell Wright. They also have Tevin Jenkins, who in outside zone runs would theoretically be tasked to cut guys off. Here's an example of what you could expect from an interior guy. If you keep an eye here on the center, you're going to have a long one technique, a guy that's trying to hold that A-gap. So Tevin Jenkins would theoretically be tasked getting in front of this guy. And I know this is the center, but it works the same way with the left guard. You're obviously running this play to the weak side, so the center has a reach as opposed to if you ran this to the strong side, which would be the left side. In that instance, it'd be the guard. But it's basically the same thing what the center is doing where he has to reach that one technique. Tevin Jenkins does a really, really good job. So zone runs is going to work really well for a team like the Bears as Ben Johnson kind of comes in there. At the same time, you have a guy in Darnell Wright who I truly think is going to be a top 10 offensive tackle, who's going to basically be tasked with making contact with these guys and really just pushing them out of there, creating that movement. Again, that's something we've already seen with a guy like Darnell Wright. But again, 70% of runs from a Ben Johnson offense is, of course, going to be outside zone. And I think this works really well for a team like the Bears. I also do think that the Bears can continue to upgrade the O-line. I think the Bears could definitely look to add a left tackle as well as a center. I think those are two positions you can upgrade, but I think the Bears have the potential to be a top 10 offensive line if they're able to add a couple of pieces at those two positions. Now, I should also go ahead and just kind of throw this out there. The Bears will run power run concepts as well. Here's one where the lines are going to run duo, so that'll probably be one of the power-based concepts that you'll run. A duo has obviously really taken over the NFL over the past couple of years. Ben Johnson also loves to run ISO. He doesn't really utilize a fullback a whole ton. In fact, statistically this past season, Ben Johnson only used the fullback 19 total times. So from a personnel side, usually you're not going to have a fullback in the game. Now, obviously Ben Johnson loves his tight ends, and pretty much everything he does utilizes at least one tight end. But you can also look at some of these stats here really quickly. You get a 610 plays out of 11 personnel, 361 out of 12, and 51 out of 13. And you can tell that's basically all of what Ben Johnson mostly does. Right? You're almost never going to come out here with no tight ends, with 4 or 5 wide receivers on the field at once. Ben Johnson, most of what he does is going to involve 1 or 2 tight ends, and sometimes even 3. And do note, sometimes those tight ends do end up being the fullback, like you obviously saw in this play, right? You get a fullback in the game, but really it's a tight end that just motions to that fullback positions, and they run duo out of that concept. So Ben Johnson really comes down to being able to utilize multiple tight ends. And I should go ahead and state this, most people are going to give credit to the running back for having success when it comes to running the football. But we also got to give credit to the run game coordinator, the design of this offense, the blockers up front. It's more than just Shamari Gibbs being a good running back. To me, these plays don't work without the guys doing what they do up front. I mean, think about this play here, right? You're going to get a center that has to reach on the nose tackle. And more than that, this nose tackle is not going to let the center reach, but the center has to just continue to stick with it. He has to continue to move the feet, he has to continue to try to hold the block. And if he does that long enough, at some point he reaches this guy. And in this instance, he does. Then you look at the right guard and right tackle, and they have a double team on the 4-eye technique defensive tackle. They're going to make contact with him, and they're going to push him out. Right? To me, the guys up front are taught what they have to do, and they're executing it. Right? So the run game working also comes down to the coordinator a little bit. And to me, Ben Johnson does a really, really good job. And I'm so excited for the Chicago Bears as we kind of go forward to be able to have success, because I truly think the Bears are going to end up being one of the best teams in the NFL. And again, it's taken time to get to this point, right? It wasn't perfect early on. We know some of the coaching hires and decisions really didn't work out, but we also do have to realize that the best coaches are going to take certain jobs. They're going to skip out on other jobs, right? They're not going to just take whatever job it ultimately is. Also, I should throw this in there. Ben Johnson loves to run the football. There's not a whole lot of teams that run the football more than the Detroit Lions. And a big part of that is because for Jared Goff to have success, you got to run the football. And more than that, you got to be able to play action off the run. So here's a great example of that. You're going to essentially run what is called a Yankee concept. It starts with the play action first. You're going to have a guy running a deep drag, and you'll have a post on top of that. And of course, Jared Goff trusts these wide receivers where he's going to go ahead and just throw the post, right? He trusts that he's going to be able to get the ball to this guy over the top. Kind of a risky throw based off of what we kind of see, but again, it does work. And this one hits for an 82-yard touchdown. Right. But again, it's the run game that allows you to have this success where guys get their eyes in the backfield. It's all of that eye candy that kind of happens, right? It's all of what Ben Johnson's designing in terms of his spacing, right? The spacing of Ben Johnson's offense is elite. And that's kind of where we'll end this video, because I think it's important to talk about spacing. To me, when you run some of these concepts downfield, the way guys are running to whatever space that they're essentially running to is important. And Bears fans know this firsthand, right? You know that these guys need to not be too close to one another, right? As these plays ultimately end up hitting, you don't want guys running into the same spot. And that's part of what allows this team to have success, right? It's a part of what allowed the Ben Johnson offense to have the success it had. Now, of course, Jared Goff did a really good job being able to run the structured portion of the offense, but the spacing that Ben Johnson runs is absolutely elite. Here's another example of that. You're basically going to get a really nicely spaced out play, and this one's going to pick up 31 yards. Ben Johnson, very solid when it comes to that spacing. The offensive formation is not anything crazy, but, just the way that some of these routes are paired up. You have a guy running in and out. You have a drag across the middle. You have a tight end going into the middle of the field. You got another guy taking the top off the right side. You even have a check down option. Just the spacing of these plays is really, really nicely done. And again, Bears fans, having had Luke Getsy, understand how important spacing is. You got to make sure guys know where they need to run. You don't want these guys to run into one another as they're running these different routes. Here's another really nicely designed play. You're essentially going to have a quick element within this play as well as a deep element. And I want to kind of talk about this because this is something Ben Johnson does as well. So underneath, you're going to have a spacings concept. You get 2 hitch routes. You get a tight end that's going to ultimately stop as well. But on top of that, you're going to have a guy that's going deep with the dagger across the middle of the formation. So you're going to have 3 guys that you can basically hit underneath, and then you'll have 2 routes downfield with the dagger, obviously. And of course, you're going to end up seeing that the dagger, which is actually the guy that was on the inside, he's going to end up hitting the dagger, and he's going to be wide open, and Jared Goff's going to find the passing lane. He's going to hit for 28 yards. But again, the play design that you're putting out there, this is elite stuff right here, right? It's an elite job by not only the coordinator, but of course the offensive line does their part as well. And let's go ahead and touch on that a little bit as well. We talked about this with Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron utilized the 5-man protection a ton. So this is something the Bears are going to have to get used to. Not that they don't already do this, but this is something they're going to have to really get used to, where you're going to run 5 guys into true routes. We're not going to chip with tight ends. We're not going to chip with running backs. Luke Getsy also ran a lot of 5-man stuff, so I think the Bears will be okay. But pretty much every single one of Ben Johnson's passing plays utilize 5-man protections. Now, they will go to 6 or 7, right, with guys chipping essentially if they're playing Myles Garrett or if they're playing Michael Parsons or Austin Booker, right, guys that are elite pass rushers. But for the most part, these guys are going to end up going against 5-man pass protection. And it's important for the Bears to be able to fix that left tackle position and even the center, because you got to make sure your guys are up front blocking for the quarterback, because these plays aren't working if the guys up front cannot 5-on-4 block, pick up the blitz, pick up the pressure. If these guys can't get it done up front, the offense is going to struggle. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, man. I'm definitely excited for Ben Johnson as he kind of gets into this scheme and system. The guy's done so many revolutionary things this season. And I do think that as we kind of go forward, he'll continue to do those different things, and he'll be able to kind of implement that to the Chicago Bears. We'll obviously continue covering the Bears on this channel. It's a team that I thoroughly enjoy watching, although we haven't gotten into too much of their film this year because it was kind of bad at certain times. But we're going to continue to cover the Bears. We'll definitely continue to get into some of the younger guys. We got a Darnell Wright video coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll also get into some of the rookies, and of course, we will continue to cover them as the draft kind of approaches. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with another video.